We'll start with this. Minnesota Vikings offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur has been hired as the new head coach of the New York Giants. They made that official on Monday afternoon, less than 24 hours after Shurmur and the Vikings were beaten by the Eagles in the NFC title game. He replaces Ben McAdoo, who you may remember was fired in early December. He spent the last 2 years with the Vikings, including as the offensive coordinator this season. Shurmur does have head coaching experience. Speaking of Cleveland, 2 years with the Browns from 2011 to 2012. This will be his fifth different organization, having also previously served 2 stints with the Eagles and spent 2 seasons with the now Los Angeles Rams. Adam Schefter joins us now. And Adam, simply the question, why Pat Shurmur?
Well, listen, Wendy, you talked about the head coaching experience. I think that's a factor, especially when you're dealing with the New York market. You've got an offensive background, and I think play callers in this league are tough to come by, at least ones that can do a good, solid job of it, and they know what they'd be getting in Pat Shurmur. He's a man of integrity, a man of honor. I think the Giants looked at that entire package of experience, an offensive mind, character, brought it all together, and came to the conclusion that Pat Shurmur was the right man to lead this franchise into the future. It is a difficult job stepping into that situation in New York with that roster right now, but they believe that Pat Shurmur is going to be up to that challenge, particularly having served as the head coach of Joe Thomas and the Cleveland Browns at one point.
Well, Adam, you're right. And Joe, let's start right there. Since you've played under Pat Shurmur, is he the right fit for a culture change that seems to be necessary with the Giants?
Yeah, I think he can be a great fit for the Giants. Like you mentioned, he was in Cleveland with me. I think he did a pretty good job. You know, the record wasn't there, but the only reason he didn't get a 3rd season in Cleveland is because we had an ownership change, and they wanted to bring in all their own people. But Pat's a very steady coach. He's not a roller coaster guy. He's not going to get caught up in the emotion of a season or a game. And I think he's a guy that veterans can really respect because he's really good with his X's and O's. He's known to be a good quarterback developer, and I think those guys will really respect him.
You know, it's interesting because if there's one quality other than obviously the X's and O's, which is paramount, that will serve you well in that New York media market, it's that composure, that steady hand, because they will come at you, Jeff, as you know well.
Yeah, as soon as you get the job, you're already coming at.
Probably already. Well, I'm sure it's already happening.
Absolutely. No, but to Joe's point, I don't think from a coaching issue it's going to be a problem. We have a personnel problem. I mean, you think about offensive line and what they have to do. Now you're talking about, is Eli going to be the guy? You're going to have the 2nd pick in the draft. Do you take a quarterback? How do the distraction and the relationship of that? Are you trying to get him in and bring him in? All of those things are things in a New York market that we all know can spin out of control quickly. Now you put on the OBJ situation or how that thing is going to play out contractually. All of those things are issues when you are the head coach of the New York Giants. And so much, I think you get underplayed in certain markets. There, everything that you say gets magnified tenfold. And so I think for him, it's going to be finding the right staff that can balance all the noise and distraction, because he'll walk into a pretty good team. I mean, you look at defensively, they're pretty good. Offensive, they have a lot of weapons they can use if they're healthy. You got some pieces and parts you got to fix, but distractions are hard, and especially coming from Minnesota to New York, could not be, on the lower.
It's a different
more opposite,
deal.
Yeah, polar opposites right there.
And you use the word issues, and that's what I think the word to characterize the Giants season. There were issues, if you will, from start to finish. And Joe, Eli Manning is there. I'm sure you watched, like the rest of us, what happened so unceremoniously. Now he's back. Is Pat Shurmur, in your opinion, a good fit for Eli Manning for the remainder of his career?
I think so. Pat's a West Coast guy. He learned under Mike Holmgren and Andy Reid. And so I think those concepts will serve Eli Manning really well, especially you bring Odell back into the mix. That just entirely changes the offensive dynamic they're going to have. And like I mentioned earlier, Pat's really known to be a good quarterback coach. So even though he's the head coach, he's going to be able to be hands-on with Eli, teaching him exactly the intricacies that he wants in that offense.
And I'll say this about what he does exceptionally well. He can get the ball out of your QB's hands quickly.
And that's what you need with Eli Manning.
With Eli Manning, let's make sure we're keeping him protected and developing that number 2 guy instead of having to play him early because of injury.
Critical for a veteran quarterback like Eli Manning. So with the addition of Shurmur in New York, Adam, that leaves 2 head coaching jobs still open. Where do we stand with the Lions and the Colts?
Well, the Detroit Lions are not even going to schedule a second interview with the Patriots defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, because they believe that they will get him in the end and hire him as their head coach. And Matt Patricia wants to go to Detroit at this point in time. So Patricia is expected to be the Detroit Lions head coach, leaving the New England staff. And with Patricia gone and the Cardinals' job now filled, it looks like Brian Flores could be in line for a promotion there from linebackers coach to defensive coordinator. As for the Indianapolis Colts and Josh McDaniels, it's a situation where they're going to have a second interview. It would not surprise me if the Colts owner, Jim Irsay, flew into Foxborough at some point in the next week to put a personal pitch on Josh McDaniels to try to seal this deal, to convince him to come to Indianapolis. They want to hire him. They intend to hire him. I think the two sides will be able to work this out in the end, but this deal is not done at this point in time, and we'll see whether or not they can lure McDaniels out of Foxborough to Indianapolis.